to let me know.
We're a little late on the music, and we're a little late because Jeff probably played that music, about 6 or 8 months ago when he was trying to make his decision. So we're a little late on that, but so what I thought is, and what Jeff wanted to do was start out with a little background on himself. He guaranteed me he would share secrets and share the nitty-gritty of his life story, but he's going to do all that in about 10 or 15 minutes, and then we're going to go through a Q&A. So I'm going to give him the mic, and if you all would help me welcome Jeff Kightlinger up to the...
Thank you very much, Carl, and it's really a pleasure to be actually in person at an event. This is the first kind of in-person thing I've done. And I think what's really fitting about this is this will be my last kind of event like this, at least as a GM of Metropolitan, former GM. And I think it's really fitting it's in Orange County. And there's a reason I'll say that, and a lot of you probably don't know this, but talk about a lucky break. I had just gotten into the water business. I had come in from the private sector. I was in a law firm, and I got hired by Metropolitan, and the very first Aqua I went to was in Palm Springs. I didn't know anyone in the water business. I worked more on toxics and issues with sanitation. I didn't do any clean water work. And someone kind of felt sorry for me and said, here, come join us at dinner, because I didn't know anybody at Met or anywhere for that matter. And the person I sat next to was Jack Foley and Mary Jane Foley. And I spent the whole evening talking to him, got to know him really well, and became really good friends with both Jack and Mary Jane. And they were in my camp from that moment on. When a couple years later, the chance to become general counsel came up, Jack Foley was, this is our person, we need to push for him. He convinced Don Owen. Don Owen, you'll remember Don Owen, he was skeptical. He said, I like my attorneys to be a little more aggressive, and you seem pretty quiet, Jeff. And Susan Traeger came and beat him up and said, damn it, he's the smartest guy, you gotta support him. And then then a few years later, when the chance to become general manager came up, it was Jack Foley and other Orange County people that said, you're the right guy for the job, Larry Dick and others. And it really was Orange County that was always in my camp and always pushing me for these jobs. So this is, they've always been my strongest supporters. And I also think not just personally, but the MWDOC element on our board and the Orange County folks have always pushed, I think, at the Met board for the right policies. Regionalism, working together, looking at the big picture. Yes, they want, some cheap groundwater replenishment. I understand that. I've only heard that for 25 years. But they always pushed for what is the right solution at Met? What's best for the region? What's the big picture issues? And I always wish, I wish more of our member agencies kind of took that big picture to heart. So I always want to thank Rob Hunter and Harvey and the staff. The staff have been terrific. They come to all the meetings. They've been tireless. So you MWDOC board members should know they're always in there fighting for the right things at Met. So thank you, Orange County, and thank you, MWDOC, and thank all of you for being in the right place at Met, and frankly, for supporting me. So thank you. I think about where we sit right now in a kind of a scary moment in terms of when you look at the West and the whole Southwest and what's looking at, a drought that's kind of about as interesting, is a mild word, a scary drought that I've ever seen. And, we've been through, my 15 years as GM, I looked at it, 12 of them were below normal years. 4 of them were record-shattering dry years. So hopefully the next guy, Adele, will have a little better luck hydrologically. But I think that's unlikely. That's not really the world we're in anymore. This drought is different in a way that I've never seen. I've never seen the system this tight before. Metropolitan is actually kind of what's underappreciated is we're kind of the glue that makes the rest of stuff work. So when Santa Clara wants to get water, they want to pull it out of semi-tropic. That water physically can't be delivered north to Santa Clara. It comes to Met. Met makes the exchange possible. We make all these exchanges possible. We work with DWR. When Westlands needs to make the issue for their July and August deliveries, because Met has this robust banking system and storage system, we back off and say, you take the water in July and August. We'll take it in October and November. We're kind of indifferent. We have more flexibility. We can move our Colorado River water. We can pull water out of storage. We can make the whole system work for DWR, USBR, the Central Valley, and to a large extent, the Colorado River. And that's because we're the one agency that really invested and built and has that flexible tools to make it all work. And this year, we couldn't make anything work because there was no water in the system. There was nothing to exchange. Santa Clara wanted to exchange. They said, there's no water. Even in 2014-15, which was a 5% allocation year, there was more water you could make exchanges with. But San Luis is bone dry, Oroville's bone dry, Shasta's bone dry. Never had that all happen at once. The Colorado River's plummeting. And yet, here we are. Met has more water in its reserves than we've ever had in our history. So it's this weird conundrum where the system is kind of in a real free fall, and we're really robust. And we're in pretty good shape. We're not in pretty good shape, we're in excellent shape. We're in shape for 2, 3, 4 years of this kind of conditions. And that didn't really happen by accident. This last 15 years, we've really worked hard on getting to that position. We've really focused on a strategy of, in the wet years, you build your storage accounts. You have partnerships. You have the Central Valley banking partners. That helps, those Central Valley banking programs shore up our exclusive areas. We got the Lake Mead banking to shore up on the east side. And then most importantly, we have Diamond Valley Lake that can deliver water north, south, west, and east, every direction in our system as we need it. And then one of the brilliant things the board did, and one of the things I'm proudest of, is when we finished the inland feeder. The inland feeder was a $1.1 billion pipeline that we've used basically 3 times. And that was a tough sell to the board. We're going to build a $1.1 billion pipeline and use it about every 5 years. And the rest of the time, it's going to pretty much sit idle. Yeah, we can trickle a little water in it. It's only for those big years. It was 2018, the wettest year in California history. We moved about 500,000 acre-feet through the inland feeder in 4 months. You couldn't have done it with the rest of the system. It took us 4 years to fill DVL when we built it. It now takes us 4 to 5 months with the inland feeder. And sure, you only get to use it in those big wet years, but that enables the whole strategy of wet year, getting the water in the system in the wet years, and then lasting for those 5, 6 dry years in a row. But that took a $1.1 billion investment on top of the $2.2 billion to build DVL. And so to do all that, you had to have this incredibly robust financial system. And that's one thing Met brings to the table, that 19 million people rate base. But smart, prudent planning. We've managed our debt. We're AAA rated. When opportunities come up, like 20,000 acres in the Delta, bought it in cash. 20,000 acres in the Palo Verde Valley over the last 2 decades, we bought it in cash. These are the kind of strategic investments you can make when you're prepared to do them. And so that's how Met's really gotten prepared. Now, obviously there's some incredibly big challenges coming up. We're going to have to renegotiate all the operating guidelines on the Colorado River between now and 2026. And frankly, we don't really have till now in 2026. You have to do NEPA. That takes 2 years. So you really have between now and 2024. And if the drought keeps going at this pace, you may not even have that. In the Bay Delta, you have a system that we can't seem to get out of gridlock on. But every year, the situation's getting worse. And we have to get out of gridlock, and we have to find a way to do that with one of our governors. We couldn't do it with Arnold Schwarzenegger. He started the process on the tunnels. We got to Jerry Brown, where we actually got a 2-tunnel proposal completed. And now here we are with Gavin Newsom starting over on a single tunnel proposal. You know, one of these governors has to get this over the line if we're going to be able to make that wet year, dry year strategy work. But the good news is, you know, we have plans. We have the ability to do this. I mean, Met has demonstrated in the face of kind of relentless drought, you can actually get more resilient. You know, we pushed down our demands by 30%. One of the big pieces on that was spending $350 million in 18 months on turf removal. I was talking with some board members. There's probably been like 4 or 5 decisions at Met that really made me stay up all night. That turf removal recommendation was one of them. I remember, you know, I don't really get mad and I don't really yell at staff very much, but I remember really yelling at staff when 3rd time in a row they basically said, sorry, we overspent. And I go, how hard is this? You have a checkbook. You write checks for turf removal. When you run out of money, you stop writing them. And they go, well, this is the 3rd time in a row you overspent. And I have to go to the board and said, sorry, I spent money you didn't budget for. And I said, I've had it with this approach. And I said, we're going to cut the program off. We're just going to cut it off. We're going to go cold turkey, and that'll be that. And they were like, oh, but the public doesn't like that. And I go, well, the board doesn't like me spending money they didn't authorize. And then I thought, well, maybe we go the other way. Instead of budgeting $35 million, how about budgeting $350 million? And kind of walked into the boardroom and made that recommendation. It was kind of a jaw-dropping moment, but it really was a smart moment. It really changed the dynamic. By having that lower demand, that gives us the ability to bank water, a lot of water in those wet years. By having the infrastructure that allows us to move that water, and then having the financial structure to make it all happen, we're sitting here today being very resilient. Now we got to do that on the Colorado River with everybody else and make them partners on it. And we got to get the state of California to realize this is the plan for the future. This is how you deal with climate change. You got to build that right infrastructure. You got to put the money in the smart investments, and you got to get everybody working together on this. Very doable, very hard, but doable. And now I'll sit and have Carl ask questions. So thank you.
Couple of questions for you, Jeff. Why was now the right time for you to retire? And what has it been like going through this transition period? I mean, you could have kept going, the way I see it, but what made you, what was controlling the timing? And did it have anything to do with the Delta fix or the inability to fix it?
You know, at some point you always figure it's time to go. And when is the right time to go is always a very tricky thing. And you want to go when people aren't asking you to leave. I've watched some of my predecessors, and they'd kind of stayed to a point where people were asking them to leave. I may have barely beaten it, maybe I didn't even beat it at all, I'm not sure. But I decided I wanted to leave before I was asked to leave. That was part of it. I wanted to leave when I was confident Met was in a good position and I was comfortable with our water supply situation, our financial situation. And I also felt the really big decisions, the big decision on a Bay Delta decision is about 2023, 2024. The big decisions on the Colorado River negotiations are 24, 25. The regional recycled water program that I think is a very exciting project, but it's a $3 billion project that really needs partners and a lot of good thinking. The environmental review on that's going to be 2023, 24. So there's about a 3-4 year window here where I thought it would be a good time for a new person to come in, get situated, have the board really take stock of these big issues looming, and as opposed to go right up to the edge of 2024 and say, good luck. So I thought the timing made sense to me. Maybe in hindsight, I didn't expect a worldwide pandemic when a week after I announced, and things like that were unfortunate, but it sort of made sense to me. That was my thinking at the time.
So one of the things you mentioned before, you talked a little bit about difficult decisions and things that kept you up at night. I felt in the 2016, 17, 18 timeframe that the Delta fix was going to become real, and it kind of turned the other way. What did that feel like from your perspective? I imagine that was quite a disappointment. Were you angry at that time? Were you disappointed? What were the emotions that went along with that?
So I had a brief conversation with candidate Newsom when he was running for governor, and we talked about the tunnels, and he expressed some skepticism, so I could understand where he was coming from. And then after he got elected, he asked me to go to breakfast with him literally like 3 days before he gave his State of the State speech, and told me he was going to announce his decision on a single tunnel. And he wanted to know my reaction, and I said, I'm really disappointed. It's going to set the project back quite a bit in terms of time and effort. And he gave an answer that I thought was thoughtful in its way, where he basically said he's asked that question of virtually every high elected position around California. And he was like, kudos to Metropolitan and you and your board for getting it this far. But he goes, best I can tell, you're pretty much it in terms of really wanting to get this done. And he goes, the major mayors in Southern California kind of said it's not on my radar. Most of our electeds didn't. So we've had a hard time getting buy-in at that level on this kind of important fix. And that's something we're obviously going to have to take to heart. I know I've had a lot of conversations with Charlie Wilson and others on how we do get this education moving forward and get more people bought into that, because that was something that frankly hasn't gotten that state buy-in.
Speaking of the Delta, the other thing it seems like it might take is a governor who will be around for a couple of sessions.
Not be recalled.
But are we going to have to wait until the big one happens, the big earthquake? Is that what it's going to take to get develop the political will for that to happen? Or what else can pull that together so that we would actually fix the Delta instead of just talk about a Delta fix?
It's a tough one. I think it's pretty clear. I look at, so the glass half full part of me, the optimist part of me is 15 years ago, it was considered a third rail in California politics. You really can't touch conveyance. I suggested that I wanted to do this, and a lot of advisors like, Tim Quinn and people on my staff said, you can't recommend that. You can't recommend it. It's just dead on arrival. And I just said, the more I've looked at this, it's the only physical solution out there. Someone has to start saying it. So we started saying it 15 years ago. We put it in, we took to the board a Delta plan that the board adopted, and the central tenet of it was we're going to fix the conveyance. And Met stood up and said that. Governor Schwarzenegger then said that. And then Governor Brown endorsed Governor Schwarzenegger's recommendation. And Newsom is even saying it has to be done. I just have to make it more politically acceptable. So 15 years ago, it was a third rail that nobody would touch. We've now had 3 governors that have all said it has to be done. So the good news is I think there is consensus that it needs to be addressed. The bad news is no one really wants to do it on their watch. So we're going to have to keep pushing it. But I do think it will get done because, frankly, it's the only thing that's really going to work in a climate change world is to move water fast. And the only way you can move it fast is to have something that's like our inland feeder that's ready to move that water.
Speaking of third rails and speaking of the Delta, the other major issue that mystifies me a bit is issue of storage in the state of California, because with the climate change that you already talked about, we all know that the only way you can deal with that reasonably is you need to store water somewhere, and to move it, you probably need to move it through the delta. So what do you see coming forward as storage? I see the Prop 1, but I don't see anything beyond that. How come there's no other major efforts in the state? Is it a third rail that people won't want to address, or will it take a delta fix to bring that around?
It's expensive. Storage is expensive. Met went out and did it. We went out and funded and built DVL. You've seen some of the urbans do it, Los Vaqueros, so up in the Bay Area, but you just haven't seen the state and federal government step up and do it. And that's how the big storage projects were built in the United States and in California, state and federal government funding. Met can pull it off, but there's not many institutions that can really do that. And if we're going to do it, the state and federal government have to get back in the business of funding infrastructure. The promising sign to see, the Biden administration talking about trillions of dollars on infrastructure. We haven't made that investment since the Eisenhower administration, and that, 1960 was the last big state-built storage project. Until our state and federal government get back in the business of building those things, it's really hard. And you're not going to see the agricultural community that needs the storage. They just don't afford, they can't afford it. It's only been the urban community that's been able to build any storage.
Thank you for bringing up the other topic that keeps me up at night, the ag community in the state of California, and the overdraft that keeps happening in the Central Valley. From your perspective, how do you see that one being reconciled? Because it's a water rights issue, it's a land rights issue, it's a food security issue, it's an overdraft issue. And so we've already talked the Delta may be a third rail, the storage may be a third rail. Is this another third rail? We got too many of those.
Well, all right, if you don't fix conveyance, then you're not going to be able to move water north of the Delta into the Central Valley. If you don't have storage, then there really isn't a place for the Central Valley to absorb it quick enough. If you don't make either of those fixes and you actually enforce Sigma, the numbers are pretty frightening. The numbers are, you have to probably find 1 million acre feet. 1 million acre feet in the Central Valley equals 250,000 acres, 4 acre feet per acre. That's a huge amount of land you're going to fallow and take out of production and put people out of work. So those numbers are pretty stark and pretty frightening. So unless you get the state and federal government saying, we're going to do something about this and start investing in these fixes, you've got a pretty tough situation in the Central Valley. And if you're a governor or the legislature, I don't think you want to be sitting here going, well, there's a couple 100,000 people out of work, good luck, and you're going to have to relocate. So they need to tackle this, and we keep kicking that can down the road, and it just needs to be tackled.
But ultimately, you're talking about impacting the economy of the state. The bottom line, if you're impacting the reliable water supply out into the future and the ag community, both, why doesn't that rise to the level of requiring action in the state? I mean, it's a dumb way to operate a state with the 2-point-something trillion economy that we have.
It's become this stigma out there that if the federal and state government put money in storage and it goes to benefit the agriculture, that we're subsidizing ag. Well, that's how all that ag got put in there in the first place. Right. And so if we're saying, okay, no longer going to subsidize it, you're going to have to accept that a big part of it's going to go away. And that's a real policy choice that I guess policy leaders can make, or they can kind of stumble into. But I don't really consider it subsidizing. You're making it all work, and that's part of what the role of government is. You build roads. You're not subsidizing cars necessarily. You're allowing people to move around. You build dams and you build water infrastructure. You're allowing us to eat and to have food supply. So these are kind of the role of big government.
MWD's integrated resources plan.
You can say that.
It's still in the planning process. It's going to come out. We understand that you know what it's going to say, so can you share with us what you think the IRP is going to come up with?
So, odd story, Marcia Scully, our general counsel, and I were hired together in the same week in 1995. And we finished our first IRP in 1996. And it's a 25-year look ahead. And I'm wrapping up 25 years, and we have been together for every single IRP. And we've now reached one complete planning cycle, done. So I thought, that's another reason it was a good time to retire. It was like, check, 15 years as GM, 25 years, IRP planning cycle, all completed. It's actually worked. It's had its things that are off and things that we've discovered and learned, and but by and large, it's been a really good process of looking ahead 25 years and then revisiting it every 5 years and going, okay, these 5 things didn't quite work out exactly as we thought. These things actually work better, and then adjusting it and keeping it like a living document. And so it's really going to be more of the same of that. Our WRM people, and I can kind of pick on them because they're not here. They, love these guys, wonkiest guys in the world. They really got carried away with their modeling this time, and they were going, before we would just do a single model, a gap analysis, and it was something I could understand, as a lawyer doing modeling math and whatever I do. They came up with, we're going to do scenario planning and 4 different models and 4 robust things, and it starts shooting off like this into this whole myriad, and he goes, and these have another 4, and these have another 4. And after a while, I was like, just tell me when you're done.
That's the advantages of being the general manager.
And they are pretty much done, and it, to my mind, it looks more or less the way it always did. You have your gap analysis, and there it is. But it's a lot more robust now, and it still reaches the same place, what we need to do, and it talks about how we need to continue to do the same things we always know we had to do. Invest in, shore up our imported supplies. Those are the backbone of the system. They're not replaceable in our lifetime, not in the next lifetime. Continue to develop as a robust recycled world and all our alternative supplies to shore up the parts we're losing to climate change, and keep the demand management lid on things as we continue to grow, even though it's slowed down.
Let me give you one more hard question, and then we'll go to the easy ones. So the one we haven't talked about, you actually mentioned it, but once again, I'm interested in how's this going to, what will drive the states and agencies that depend on the Colorado River to deal with that? And as you mentioned, we have until 2026 is when the current agreements end. We're already getting ready to call for a shortage coming up here real soon, so it will start hitting. But once again, it's one of these issues. What will it take to cause the folks to work together to resolve a situation like that? And should we start looking at major interbasin transfers to augment these systems? Or is it going to happen a different way? What do you see?
The good news is, in my career, I've seen the Colorado River go from extremely contentious in the 90s to, harmonious is a stretch, but cooperative the last 20 years. And if you look over the last 20 years, we've adopted 2 sets of operating guidelines. We did the QSA, we did the multi-species 50 years of environmental permitting, 3 or 4 minutes with Mexico with cooperative programs. And all that within the last 20 years without suing each other. Whereas in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, we all sued each other. So that's a really remarkable 2 decades of success in cooperation. And I think it can be continued, but now the decisions are that much tougher. Basically, we have to, the lower basin, Arizona, California, Nevada, is going to have to lower usage or grow the supply by about 25%. A million and a half acre feet we got to come up with. And the upper basin has to basically, I wouldn't say cap their growth, but effectively not keep growing. So I'll have to find a more political way to say it. And the reality is you can keep growing, you just can't use more than you already are, so you're going to have to make what you're using go further. And that's going to have to be the grand bargain. I think one of the great, exciting little pieces that we got to do just last year was Met's proposal to partner with Southern Nevada and the Regional Recycle, where this is how Southern Nevada can help firm up its reliability and resiliency by investing with Met in Southern California. And my counterpart there, John Ensminger, said, I'll bet this is the first partnership you've ever done where someone else brought you a check as opposed to Met always writing the check. And I said, that's right, that's actually right. And that's a new type of partnership that can shore up the Colorado River, where we can look at ways to help grow the pie, so to speak. They can grow recycled water here, and we can exchange water back there and work together. That's what you're going to have to see to make up that 1.5 million acre-foot gap in the lower basin.
So far in this conversation, you've convinced me thoroughly that you picked the right time to retire. Let's change gears a little bit and lighten up a bit. So that song that played when you were walking up, we've heard that you are into punk rock. You had dyed your hair at one point in your life, and your big finale tonight is to dive off of a stage into the crowd and have them catch you and carry you around. So can you amplify on that a bit?
No, you guys have been good enough to have me here on a couple occasions, once with a broken leg, and Larry Dick interviewed me, and I had just gotten the crutches, and I barely made it on stage without falling on my face, so that was pretty embarrassing. So we're not going to dive and break anything. Right now, I'm still pretty hobbled. I climbed Mount Whitney on Saturday, and I can barely walk. Yeah, that was a mistake. Talked into by my son, who said, oh, come on, Dad, you did this when you were 19. I was like, yeah. 40 years later, everything hurts. So I've been on the stage with a lot of hurt legs, and we're not going to do that.
And the punk rock part of it?
I'm not going to dye my hair again. It's already, actually, now would be a good time, because it would take color easier, I suspect.
Okay, I think typically at this time, and I'm checking Damon, are we ready to go? Okay. Typically at this time, we would open up with Q&A from the audience, and there still may be time for that, but there were so many people that wanted to provide a tribute to Jeff that we asked them ahead of time to provide videos. And so we have a compilation that we're going to play for the audience now of some of the videos. We apologize, there's not enough time to focus on all of them, but we will still collect. If anybody's still working on your video to provide to Jeff, we are compiling all those, and we will deliver all those to him in a single format DVD, but tonight we thought there would be a couple that we'd like to highlight, so we ready to roll, Damon? Thank you.
Hi, Jeff. Congratulations on your retirement from the Metropolitan Water District of Southern California. Just wishing you the best from here in South Orange County. And I really, truly appreciate all that you've done, not only for Southern California and California as a whole, but for the water community. Thank you for being an instrumental leader in collaboration and coordination, and for setting the right foundation for future generations to come.
Hello, Jeff. Sally and I are on the East Coast, so we couldn't be there with you this evening, or we certainly would have been. I'm delighted that the Municipal Water District of Orange County is having this opportunity to pay our respects to you for the great job you've done as General Manager. The Metropolitan Water District of Southern California is a better place because of your service. When I met you, you were General Counsel. Having been hired from the private sector to come to Met, with your experience as an environmental lawyer, you've kept us properly grounded with respect for the planet and people and the environment, and we appreciate that. Then when you were named General Manager, I couldn't help but reflect back about what was going on about that period of time. In 2006, the world leaders were George Bush and Ms. Merkel, Tony Blair, Vladimir Putin, Mr. Chirac, and a handful of others, but Today, there's only the three of you left. Shows your staying power, Jeff. I appreciate the fact that you are an 8th generation Californian, so you understand and appreciate how much water means to Southern California and the 19 million Southern Californians that Met brings water to. We thank you for your leadership in that area. Met, under your tutelage, under your guidance, has completed the inland feeder, which has made the Diamond Valley Lake a more valuable resource than it was before. We can now fill it during times of plenty and use it for times of drought like we're in now. You're leaving Met with millions of acre feet in storage to help us meet the demands of the third driest year in recorded history. And you've also helped us revamp our workforce, bringing on the idea of an apprenticeship program so we can grow our own if we need to. And as I understand it, about 70% of the people who work at Met today have never worked for a general manager except for you. Quite an imprint and quite an impact you've made. You've done many things. You were a Boy Scout that made Eagle Scout. Only about 4% do that. You climbed Mount Whitney 40 years ago, and as I understand it, a couple of weeks ago, you did it again with one of your sons. Thank you for your leadership. You've had a good career, but Sally and I predict that you're about to fail. You're going to fail retirement. We think there's at least one more big chapter left, and we look forward to hearing from you about it. Thank you, Jeff. We appreciate your service.
Best wishes, Jeff Kightlinger. This is Al Netterhood, the newest, youngest, and best-looking MWDOC director. I'll let you determine which, if any, of those statements are accurate. I know that based on your legal background and experience and insight, you'll be able to determine exactly what that is. What is entirely accurate is that you've done an amazing job as the head of Met. You have ridden that behemoth to well-deserved accolades, unkind vituperation, and probably some deep scars. And all of that, I want to thank you for doing an amazing job.
Wade in the water, wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. Hey, Jeff, thanks for wading in the water with all of us throughout Southern California for, these so many years. We appreciate your leadership and really thank you for everything. The best to you from all of us at Orange County Business Council on a retirement well-deserved.
Nice job, Lucy.
I'm going to need a little help for this next exercise. Can I ask the president of the MWDOC board, Sat Tamarabuchi, to come on up and help out? We'd like to thank our guests and for the years that Jeff has been the general manager at MWDOC. We've always, as he expressed and we concur, we've had a great working relationship, and so we wanted to thank him for that. So I'm going to get some assistance here from our president. And Jeff?
Right. Jeff, Carl and I are both engineers, and we're amazed a lawyer could get so much done. First of all, I would like to present to you this resolution that was passed by our board. And rather than reading it, which I can't.
Well, there's this stuff in the way.
It says a lot of good things,
though. I'd like to say, just in summary, that it says that we've had are in a historic drought, and we have water. And thank you.
Mr. President, there should be a box
Right
there.
Okay.
And inside the box, there should be some tickets.
Is it in?
Damon's in the box? Yeah, keep going. It's a puzzle. So before you get to the liquor, let's do the tickets.
Oh, here's the second one. I got the second one. Okay, Ben, on behalf of our board, MWDOC board, and also our Met directors, we wanted to give you a gift. And, and also our general manager was also part of the gift giving here. As a token of our appreciation for your service, we've got you this bottle of, well, first of all, we have 2 Dodgers tickets.
Ah.
And I think they're behind home plate.
So we can watch him all on TV next week. Thank you. Thank you.
And we have,
Against the Giants.
I noticed. Thank you.
and then he's a Dodger fan.
As you should be.
Yeah.
So
We wanted to get Angel tickets, but.
Might as well get Padre tickets then.
So,
let's get to the good stuff. Let's have him open the. Actually, we should do a little pour. No, can you open that and take a look at the label? And as you do that, I will read the label. And this is a special 15-year celebrating his tenure, single malt Scotch whiskey. This premium spirit reliably embodies the qualities of its recipient, Jeff Kightlinger, in 18 out of 20 years. The smooth, easygoing taste has hints of political diligence, nuanced with an outdated legalese. Marcia. The special aromatics of Delta smelt caught in a trawler survey wafted from the palate to the olfactory sensors. The unique blend of imported water along with locally sourced Carson water, finished by way of a membrane bioreactor, results in foundational strength. The lasting finish begs the palate for little sips and big gulps, specifically delivered by seismically stabilized tunnel. MWDOC hereby dedicates this spirit to Jeff Kightlinger upon his retirement as the general manager of MWD and wishes him well in all future endeavors. Jeff, drink up and enjoy.
Congratulations and thank you for your years of service. A couple of years ago, I asked you about your position on desal, and your response, somewhat facetious, I think, was you weren't planning on building a nuclear generating station. And I was wondering if you've had any new insights or direction on desal, given what you mentioned about the Colorado River and the Delta situation.
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously it's a worldwide proven technology that works well. I mean, look at Israel, Spain, Saudi Arabia, obviously it's doable. It is expensive, and California has chosen to go on a very carbon-free energy path. And so that'll make it just that much harder to do energy-intensive programs if we're also going to, at the same time, go carbon-free at the same time. So it's one of those things that I think you're going to see desal in the near term in niche areas, the Salinas, Monterey, San Diego, places where they don't have a lot of alternatives, and grow over time. And it's just one of those financial solutions that'll grow over time. And obviously that time may accelerate depending on how the Colorado and what's going on in the Delta. Yeah.
Another question? Any hands raised, questions? All right.
Easy.